Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mortgage Heroes Weekly Podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Will.
And we are back again, guys. Inflation is slowing right as the summer housing season is in full swing. It's been getting hot in a lot of ways. Inflation's been hot forever. The weather's now finally hot in San Diego. I know everyone across the country is like, hey, shut up with that San Diego hot. That ain't nothing.
No, I just got back from Las Vegas, and I'm telling you, when I got back to San Diego, well, actually, when I was in Vegas, I was like, I will never complain about our weather again.
It was like, what, 116, 119?
Yeah. And they're like, but it was dry weather. I don't care how dry, how cold, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's dry heat. It's not that bad.
No,
it was hot.
Hey, 116, you're making chocolate chip cookies on low.
Yeah.
For real.
Crazy.
Okay, guys, we're going to talk about inflation today, and we're going to talk about housing. We're in the swing of the summer. This is when, this is peak buying season. There's a lot of things that we've been waiting to finally change that look like they're going in the right direction. So we're going to hop into that today. And the first one actually is from Realtor.com. Inflation drops again in June, which clears the path to a Fed rate cut this fall and relief for homeowners. Okay, so do we right away agree that it's relief for homeowners, or do we think it's doom on the horizon for pricing to only go up like we've been predicting it might?
No, I think it's actually a good thing. I do see it like it's in favor. I mean, I've been seeing because I see it in pricing and stuff, and I do see a difference. But you just never know, right? You never know. Again, our federal government, it's still teeter-totting where it's going to go and what direction it can go.
Yeah.
Last week we had good information and good data on pricing, like Will was saying. And although, I mean, it's still going up, it's just going up a little bit slower.
Okay. I'm so glad you said that, Brian. Brian, you're maturing so well on the show.
Yeah.
So, annual inflation in the U.S. has dropped, and our substitute for the word dropped means slowed. Okay, everybody?
Yeah.
It's still in positive territory. It's just slowed down. So dropped to its lowest level in more than 3 years last month, increasing the odds of a September rate cut.
3 years?
Yeah, I mean, since March of 2022.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, not inflation. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Fed cut. Fed increasing rates. But
I know.
So maybe we'll get a Fed rate cut in September. It's likely that's to happen. But again, I also understand they're hesitant approach to be like, well, we can't go too far too fast. We can't do this right away because then we're going to just we're basically then admitting that they would be baking in and solidifying prices where they're at versus seeing a prices kind of come back down.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think we got sizeflation put on one side, and then we got prices being sticky on the other as a result of Fed policy and all that.
Yeah.
But, so are you guys already seeing inflation go in your favor in certain things, or not yet? Not yet.
In certain things.
I mean, I don't go grocery shopping and all that, but I guess the best way to look at inflation, so a lot of us understand, is just like a big basket, right? And in this big basket, there's a bunch of toys there. There's a bunch of food. There's clothing. There's stuff that us consumers buy on a regular basis, right? And inflation is just like, what are we going to pay for these products that we utilize on a regular basis? You know, and that's just like, for me, the easiest and best way to understand. Big basket, right?
Yep.
Now, why does inflation move so slowly? Well, it's because there's a lot of things that factor. There's a lot of things in that basket that, either one thing gets worse or better. It's just it just takes a lot longer for us to see that movement.
A lot of connection points. It's the result of a lot of connection points all working together. And so, on the chart used in this article, they're talking about annual inflation rate in the U.S., that the overall inflation is now back down to where it was in January of 20, looks like February of 2018, once again, January of 17. So when you look back, and even the pre-COVID years, you saw that inflation was running right around this clip, kind of consistently. It was like, oh, here's the 12-month gap in between these three marks looks very regular, and then there's this wild spike from 21 all the way through 24 or 23, and then it's kind of slowed down. Again, it's only coming down because that's the type of chart we're using. Yeah. This is still a positive territory chart, not a plus-minus chart, and so our overall inflation is still in the growth mode, but it has definitely slowed growth.
Yeah.
And consistent with where we were before. Now, Now, underpinning this is a couple of things, or one of the intended consequences that like a year and a half ago I started talking about was that they're going to look for softening in the labor market. There's going to be more employment. Unemployment's going to go up, and now we're finally seeing that too. And when the Fed keeps saying, "Oh, we're going to be data dependent. We're going to rely on the data, and the data's going to tell us where we're going," that's what they're talking about. Jerome Powell saying that the heightened softening in the labor market and unemployment ticking up, hitting in June. Like, well, that's cooling this, and these are cause and effect issues. I know we like to say, we draw a straight line to them. You can't, because there's so many things in between these two things, but they are very close to being drawing a straight line from one side to the next.
I mean, if you just look at the graph right here, I mean, simply like if you just look at it through a common sense type of lens, it looks like it's starting to come down. So last time that it touched back in 21, where I think it hit the lowest of both of them, well, a little bit before that actually for overall inflation. But right there, if you notice in the trends before in previous year, before 21 and 2020, it started to come down, and then it started going up again around that time when things started getting really, really hot. So for me, this looks like it's not completely dropping, but it's kind of just leveling down or kind of just slowing down, like they've been saying. So I think it's going to be very brave of the Fed to cut more than 2 times this year. I believe maybe for sure 1, but it's going to be difficult for them to just start cutting because, like you said, we're going to go right back to where we were.
Where'd the 2 come from?
I just
yeah. No, I think
one September and then 1 December.
Maybe,
but I think maybe, like I was saying, maybe just 1 in September, perhaps maybe even until December.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think there's going to be 1 or 2?
Hey, you remember we discussed this
6?
Last year? It was like 6 to 8, right? I mean, luckily we hit it. I think if we rewound this, it was like maybe I think I chose 3.
I think you chose 3 to 4, and I was like
3.
We were like 5 6.
Yeah, I was like, they're going to do 100 rate cuts.
But last year I remember last year during December, rates started getting a little bit better going into the end of the year. So maybe that's something that's going to come back again. Maybe we'll see that trend, at the end of the year. Maybe they do the cut at the end of the year so that we go into 2025.
Well, we did, but then October came.
Yeah.
And that was just so disruptive with everything.
Yeah.
So again, October, we're going into the election this year, into the election month. So that's all going to be a huge cluster F of, just a whole bunch of information, data, and just, I think, a lot of volatility.
Yeah. So if this continues to be true, though, with labor and jobs looking the way it does, I mean, it should be giving the Federal Reserve confidence that they're going to be able to cut rates and then deal with the fallout of that. And I'm going to say the fallout because we've been saying on this show that if rates are cut and mortgage rates follow suit, the 10-year Treasury goes down, mortgage rates go down, that's going to bring people who maybe cannot qualify because rates are high back into qualification, which means now there's more people on the market. We're looking at the same amount of inventory that everyone else is already looking at now. And then that's going to secure home prices where they're at or drive them higher. So, I do not think that we are out of the threat zone from that happening, but I also think that the Fed has to show good face publicly and be like, we're going to do the thing we said we'd do. When things look this way and job and unemployment hits this, and when inflation goes to that, then we'll be able to start reducing rates again. So they're either going to get called on their bluff and do nothing, or actually do it and fulfill the promise that they made publicly.
I mean, it's just good news to just hear that they're going to do something, right? At the same time, there's always a flip, another side of the coin, right? And so if they do start reducing the Fed starts reducing these rates, we're going to start seeing rates pretty much aggressively going down.
Yeah.
And if that happens, all that inventory that we currently have, I mean, we already know what's going to happen with that.
What do you mean by aggressively, though?
What I think aggressively, like Brian was saying, two rate hikes. I think that could be too aggressive. 2 cuts. 2 cuts, yes.
Okay.
I think that could be a little too aggressive.
Okay.
I think one would be kind of giving the consumer that hope to, all right, let's go. Let's maybe get out of the fence and kind of let's start reanalyzing whether or not we should be purchasing a home, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
I think 2 of them would get people a lot more too excited. And I just think here we go again with the bidding wars, at least here in our town of San Diego. I'm not speaking for nationwide. It's all different.
No, I agree. And then I also feel that, when you see average rates, people look at them like, it's average like 6.85 or, 7%. But that's just an average of every mortgage rate that's being quoted out there. When in reality, depending on your case, it could be a lot better as we've seen pricing, throughout the weeks. So that's also something to keep in mind, that there is people that are getting lower than, average rates. And that's what's still continuously bringing more people to the market.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that they are paving the way for a Fed cut. I think that's going to help, actually. I'm not convinced that it's going to hurt at large. I think it's going to help, but I actually think it's going to only marginally help. It's going to help some people in some facets of the economy, and it broadly will not help others, because for people that they're already being destroyed by where inflation is at right now, having it pull back a little bit doesn't change that you're being destroyed. It's just like, how much are you getting destroyed?
Yeah.
Like if I'm upside down on my monthly budget by $1,000 every month, and now I'm just upside down by $750, I'm still upside down every month. Yeah. So, there's kind of that thing that I think about, and we can talk all day long about the headlines and housing and like that's fine. But I still think about I'll say the common consumer, like, when you're putting gas in your car and getting groceries and you're paying for stuff, like, I mean, I've paid for some stuff this year too. I'm like, how is it still this expensive to just buy these things? It's
a few things you're out like $50-$60. I'm like,
yeah, I know.
And they're essential things.
I know. and we talked, I was actually using this example in a class the other day. We're talking about sizeflation, and half the people in the room raised their hand. They'd never heard of sizeflation. And I was actually using the example of, I'm not going to name it, but it was an organic cereal brand that we bought at the house that used to make a 16-ounce box, and now it's like 13.8. And you're like, oh, so it's actually smaller, but the price is the same. So it doesn't look inflationary, but it's deflationary as far as volume. And so there's both of those happening at once. And so I was explaining that, and like the eyeballs were like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
Because again, unless you say it and you tell people, point your eyes in that direction and observe and make survey the things they don't know to look.
Yeah.
They just go, they
start making the smaller, connection. Yeah, it's right. I go buy a bag of popcorn and it's like smaller.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm happy that we're here. As you can see, I'm not like jumping up and down, and we're not like shooting off fireworks in the studio here. But it's like, this is what we expected to happen. Yet. It was going to happen at some point. We're here, and I'm not super stoked that I am. Because I don't know what it's going to do yet. It might help, but I think it's going to create challenges on the pricing side.
Stores aren't going to reduce their prices right away.
No, they're not going to.
It's going to take time. They don't want to do that.
That only exists where there's competition on the shelf.
Exactly.
And when there's competing gas stations across the corner and stuff like that. That's not for all things everywhere. Yeah. And when it comes to housing, I don't think it matters. I mean, you shared a listing with us, Brian, that's coming up in one of the neighborhoods where, like, okay, this house is $1 million. Okay, but it's not just a house is $1 million. It's what's possible there. That's what's what's driving that value in that place. It's not what's there right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, agree or disagree?
I completely agree, because when I pulled it up, I was like,
what?
Yeah. I was like,
$1 million house should not look like that.
You know what I mean? Like before sizeflation.
Yeah. You're like, hey, that says 999,000. I think the comma's in the wrong spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that 99,000? No, I don't mean that.
I was going to go over and be nosy and be like, hey, so once this gets sold, okay.
No, but
got $1 million right here too.
But in that same neighborhood, you're building up, building out, adding a whole separate thing, like that's going to be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's what
I think they do have one addition in the back or something that they did. So I mean, but still, it's kind of pretty aggressive pricing, if you ask me.
That's super aggressive.
At least for that area, like I understand the value in the area, but that's just very aggressive.
They're going to get it.
Yeah, of course they're going to get it.
Especially they're going to get it.
That's what I'm kind of more like, well, it's going to go anyways. They'll probably go for a little bit more.
Well, guys, we're already talking about house prices, guys. So let's pivot into the next topic and article for today. This is from CNBC. Here's why housing inflation is still stubbornly high. Because people are still buying houses at the prices they're listed for. Next one. That's Shelter Inflation Index is the main impediment to the Consumer Price Index falling back to the Federal Reserve target. The CPI Shelter Index has remained elevated even as inflation for market rents has plummeted, and that's due to how the Bureau of Labor Statistics constructs its housing inflation index. So housing inflation has been probably the most stubborn part of the inflation problem.
It doesn't stop going up.
It's been across renting, it's been across buying, and it's also going to be painfully slow to correct because to your point earlier, stores aren't just going to like roll back their prices.
They're not.
Hey, by the way, remember rollback? Remember the Walmart? Hey, we rolled back our prices. So this is talking about housing rollback.
Remember that?
But I know that here locally, I know that here locally, you see rents, they just perpetually go up. Yeah. And so, if people can charge 5% more a year, 8% more a year, 10% more a year on that monthly rent, they're going to get it because it's in line with what the market rate is for specific zip codes. So it being stubbornly high is a function of a lot of things happening in the economy, connected to the Fed, connected to the markets, connected to housing, cost of housing, building housing, maintaining housing, updating housing. And I don't think we're going to find our way out of this easily.
No, that goes back to what we were talking earlier. I was trying to look for my graph earlier, talking about the overall inflation and the shelter inflation on that. You know, and again, it's a gradual movement.
Yeah, super gradual, and again, it's pass through, right?
Yeah.
So, especially in the renter landlord position, where someone else owns the house and they have a mortgage on it, there's taxes, there's insurance, or maybe there's not insurance. Hey, California, so,
They may not be.
or and again, I mentioned insurance like only half jokingly, because if insurance rates are going to be approved to go up and the premiums are going to increase at a greater clip than they would normally traditionally have, well, then that's an additional cost to the landlord, which then becomes additional cost to their tenant.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of trickle down effect into it just hitting the pocketbook of the tenant when anything changes on the owner side. And again, and we're just talking about here in San Diego, where our property assessments are based off the time it was initially assessed. There's other states where they reassess annually.
Yeah, annually.
And so your property tax can change dramatically
from one year to another,
year over year over year,
Yeah.
because of what that state's jurisdiction is for how property taxes are collected. So, kind of disclaimer.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Take note of that. If you're looking to buy in another state, make sure that the state you're going to, you understand what their tax laws are regarding property taxes, how they're assessed, and when they're collected and how.
Especially Texas.
Yeah, well, that's a good...
They're like in some areas almost 3%. It's crazy.
Right.
It's pretty crazy.
Right. And that's an offset, because there's also some of these states, there's no income tax and that kind of thing, which again draws a certain type of person to go move there or whatever. But then again, you're gonna pay this other tax somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Your housing,
for veterans, that's a great place. They retire there, they can prove 100% disability. There's no taxes.
Well, that's true in that case. Yeah, you can have no taxes. But I'm saying even in the example I was just kind of like lobbing out there was like, well, if you're a retiree and you're like, oh, I'm on a fixed income. Yeah. Well, that fixed income might require you to buy a house that's really inexpensive. So the housing payment's inexpensive, but you're going to have a moving mark of that tax over the course of time, because if you're in a place that has that tax assessment changing,
no, of course,
you got to be aware of that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So consumer price index is obviously part of this. I'm contending that just the costs of ownership are higher now than they were before. They're going to remain that way no matter what the Fed does. You got the insurance problem on one hand, you got taxes on the other, and you have interest rates, which is the other thing. So when it comes down to coming up with your monthly payment for your mortgage, it's going to be your mortgage, taxes, insurance, and there's where all your costs are being driven from. And those things are not all those aren't working together in concert to go in the other direction and be lower right now.
Not at all.
So, that methodology of those things, it makes a direct impact on housing. And I think that the future of housing is going to be negatively impacted by this, because it's preventing people from getting in. It's an affordability issue through and through. Yeah.
And then you have the food on top of that, food and energy to go into that. Yep. Energy, we already know here in San Diego, it's pretty crazy. SDG&E is one of the most profitable utility companies out there in the nation, right? And so it's kind of feels the same thing. Like, should there be a rent control? Should there be an energy control?
That's a whole another show that we could talk about and go down. But no,
but that's all part of it, right? Like, this is just pretty crazy.
It's just insane, like having to pay for these things that just you use daily, and they're a vital to our survival, and yet you're paying literally. You're working to pay some in some cases, and it's just kind of like, well, where does solar
go? That's it.
Well, and so just
solar and not too solar.
Just to be clear for people who are watching this segment of the show and you're looking at this article, one of the things I wanted to point out though is that this data it's a lagging data point. Yeah. So some of the things that are changing as we're looking at this number now, these are things that were actually occurred 9 to 12 months prior, and they show up in the market now. So that also means that then when there are changes now, then in 9 to 12 months in the future, you see the effect of those changes in the positive way as well. So it's not just negative one direction. It's that when things get better, it also is going to take time for it to reflect itself through the system in all areas.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect. It takes time. Well, the good thing it did say that's a good note is the pullback in shelter inflation has been slower than expected, economists said. It fell to a 5.2 annual rate in June of 2024 from a peak of 8% in early 2023. That's a yay! Yeah, celebrate.
It's still increasing, but at a slower rate, which is what we need. I don't think it's ever going to be like a zero. I mean, you'd be in a free fall when it comes to values if that was the case. But again, especially when it comes to renting, that'd be a free fall in all costs for the landlord as well, going down, which I don't expect. So as for this, it is a cautionary tale. If you are in rental land, you need to be prepared for housing and shelter costs to remain stubbornly high for some period of time longer, or semi-permanently to permanently. It is just the way of it right now. And even behind the scenes, when we're looking at deals and we're seeing things, we're seeing them at the market rate right now and the market rents right now, which no one is factoring in reducing those market rents when you buy it. So just so you know, investors buying a house in 2024 that they're going to put on the market to rent, they're not looking at reducing the rent in 25 or 26.
Just so you know.
Just so you know. Housing market predictions for 2024, guys. When will home prices be affordable again? This is from Forbes. I'm going to say the answer is never. And good show. See you guys next week. No, enough with the quit early jokes from Andy today.
Yeah.
So
I'm good. Let's go.
This is it's kind of like a general article that covers a lot of the facets of housing and the economy that we've already been talking about, but there's some things in here today I wanted to kind of like highlight because we have had a persistent problem with affordability for well over a year and a half now.
Yeah,
and
it's been actually longer than that, Andy.
Yeah.
I mean, I laugh at this one right here because this is going to be the third worst home sales there has been in ever recorded in history. So here we go. I know 2 years, but it's 3.
Yeah.
It's like, we just beat it again.
Yeah. 2022 was the lowest. I mean, there was only 240,000 homes available, something like that, any given month. That's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah. So inventory is a problem.
A big issue.
And the inventory is driving the price, and which is killing affordability, and coupling that with current market rates, the lock-in effect, things like that. So what were you going to say, Brian?
So I was going to say, going into, later into this year, if rates do get, cut once at least, that I feel is going to, push enough people to then give one wave of, more inventory for people that are like, hey, well, this is good enough for me. I can take off the golden handcuffs. Like it's time to move.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's going to be a pattern that we'll see more and more as, they start cutting more and more people are going to get those, remove those golden handcuffs and say, okay, now I can go and sell. I'll take my equity, dump it into the house. I'll have a reasonable payment where I can, still make it. But until we start hitting those levels, everybody's at a different tier, but there is more inventory to be unlocked. I confidently believe.
Of course. But again, if they reduce the rates the way they're planning to, then that's going to start kind of reducing that inventory, right? I wanted to get a stat here too. And I did that from January 1st of 2023 to July 1st of 2023. In the year 23, there was approximately 2.28 million homes sold by that time.
Yep.
So we all said then coming to 2024, things will be different. Spring is going to be great. We're going to have all this flood of sellers. Well, that's not the case.
Yeah.
It wasn't the case. I got the same data from January 1st of 2024 to July of 2024. Approximately 2.14 existing homes were sold in the U.S. And that's according to the census.
2.14 million?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So versus the 2.2.
2.2, yeah.
You're the math guy. How many?
No,
what's the difference in that one?
0.5%. Yeah. No, I got. Yeah. So, but I think so. Part of the function that I think we should keep our eye on as we're talking about these things and we're answering people's questions, even here at the office too, is like I think median price is going to be a representative reflection of where this goes next.
Correct.
Where does affordability go? Because there's this lockout period. There's this lockout problem we have where people who want to buy a house can't. So it's not that they're unwilling. It's that they're unable on paper, mathematically. Yeah. So if at some point the median home price levels off or maybe even just eases up a little bit and goes down, I think then you'll actually be able to sit here and say, oh, affordability is easing as well, because I think those things kind of go hand in hand. And part of what could potentially blow that up is people moving from high cost areas to lower cost areas. Yeah. And I'll give you an example. Some of our friends that just left San Diego a couple of weeks ago to make their way to Texas are taking all their home equity and they're buying a Texas home at a, let's say, 2024 revised Texas price that was only, let's say, half that price 2 years ago. So the house now is twice as much as it was, but they're able to buy it because they're coming from Chula Vista, and they sold their house for a lot more than this house over here that they can afford on one income, not two. Because and even though that house is twice as expensive as it was in 2022.
Yeah.
How gnarly is that? That I think is going to be the bomb. Is however many times that happens from a high cost to a lower cost area, that's actually going to lock all this in. I think.
I already talked to a realtor this morning. I was talking to her, and she's like, "I'm going to Arizona."
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. She's already like, "I'm done." And she, she's a good producer here in San Diego. And so she's just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to Arizona. And I go, what's the reason for that? She goes, you know what? I just want to stretch my dollar. Right.
And and how many people else does she not speak for, but how many people have that same sentiment that either are doing it that we don't know, or they're just silently making that decision because that's what they're at?
I mean, I love San Diego. I love the weather, so I'm going to stick here. But if I didn't have my family here close, I'd probably be looking at like Florida, somewhere. Well, and Key West, where they have the best key lime pie.
This wraps up the affordability problem and topic though too, because when people are doing that, they're going to, let's say again, go from high cost to a lower cost area. Oh, I got to get out of here because I can afford to stay over there.
Yeah.
Well, they're taking their purchasing power there, which in some other places now is out purchasing the people that have lived there their whole life.
Yeah.
And I heard this about Idaho, I want to say last year, where there's some people in Boise, like, I can't afford to live in Boise now because people who've got out-of-state money here brought it here. I can't afford to even stay here. And this is only a couple of examples, so it's not like about the whole state. I heard like 2 different people that had left here, they went there, and they're hearing this from locals, like, we can't do this. Yeah. All these out-of-towners are affording way more than we can, and we can't keep up now in the place that we were raised in.
Yeah, it's so true, though. So true.
Okay.
Unfortunate.
Brian, predictions. So let's talk about some of the other things that are in this article. What were you going to bring up, though,
So I was going to go back to the rates. So they said it right here. So better that rate reductions happen at a metered pace, incrementally improving buyer opportunities over a stretch of time rather than all at once. And I think that's going to be a huge, huge play for the Fed, that they're going to have to cut accordingly because, like I said, if they cut too much and too fast, we run back into the same problem. So like I said, I think in tapered meters, they're going to be, offloading more and more inventory by, reducing rates as well, but not too much until we go right back to the same thing. So it says at the end, it says, Gumbinger predicts it could be a while before we return to those rates, which would be like 2014, 2019 levels.
Yeah. And that's when it was like what? We were saying in the high threes.
Yeah.
We were like high threes, mid fours during their time, all the way from, I want to say I did look up some information from 2014 to 2019. They were between the high threes and mid fours.
And I think right here he also says that he adds the mortgage rates returning to a more normal upper 4% to lower 5%. I honestly think that's a healthy range for the market, because we saw how crazy it gets if we start going sub 3. It's like, you can't have it all at once. So I think around the 4 to 5%, like they said, is going to be a good range for everybody to still be able to get affordable rates and still get good enough deals to where, it's a healthy market.
Yeah, it's funny. So if you could get a rate right now at 3.875 and a 4 1/4, would you complain? Right?
No.
How many people? And you remember back in the day when we're at 2.6.
I'm going to wait till I go lower.
Can I get a 2.2? Like, are you?
No.
Get it.
2.25. Can I get a 1.99? I'm like, what? I'm going to wait for it to get a little bit lower. I'm like,
it's going to come down. It's going to come down to price, though, guys, too. Yeah. Because if you're saying, the rate of high 4s or low 5s is going to work for me. Okay, but at $1.5 million? And $2 million? Or is you saying the 4 to 5 works for you at like 500,000 still? So there's still this. I mean, that's great. Ideologically, that sounds awesome. But how many times we talked about this on this show? We're like, 40 years ago, the rates were in the high teens. Yeah, well, the house was for $60,000. Well, so there's this play between both of them where if there's the possibility, I guess the only way to make this possible is if rates go there and more inventory rushes to the market, then prices actually can just hold, or with more inventory, they can kind of go down so people can afford. Because you have all those pieces together. It's affordability.
Yeah.
If you're going to tell me I can afford the house at $1 million today, but I can't at $1.25 million, well, then I need the rate to go from 6 to 3, not 6 to 5.
And it sucks because it's like fixing one thing over here is breaking another thing over here. So it's like, which one, how can we fix it? And
that's why the Fed's playing the balancing act. They got to be strategic to how they're going to, move these rates. Otherwise, it's
not an easy job.
Such an unbalanced, no, at all.
Yeah. And
somebody's got to do it.
Mixed in with that,
American people.
But mixed in with that, here we are. We're sitting here chatting about. We're relying on other people to help us help the people who want the help. So we're relying on the Fed. We're relying on like home builders. We're relying on municipalities. relying on insurance companies and in California, at least the insurance commissioner of California. So there's all these other pieces that we are completely out of control and influence of in order to affect variables that will help us actually help more active duty military and veterans. So it's not like this goes away. It doesn't go away, but we have to have things going in the right direction. So like sentiment has to go up. We have to have permits go up. We have to have more inventory come to the market. We have to have prices cool down and rates get more favorable for affordability to work. So we're like, we're talking about, what does the housing outlook look like for the rest of 2024? It's all those things. For me, and my side of the table, it's all those things. I need all those things to work. Of course. But they're not working together. When you see sentiment dropping and home builders putting less single-family home permit requests in and more multifamily, maybe there's inventory in that'll balance out and equalize. But like new home sales, they're kind of there. Pending home sales are down. Something has to give where they have to start course correcting. Otherwise, we're in for a much bigger problem.
And then now you got that NARS, implementing that settlement August 14th. That's going to make another difference. It's going to have another impact. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think it's going to be an interesting couple of months while it gets settled in or kind of gets like digested and you kind of get used to the new way of doing things. Because it's going to be very interesting the way that realtors start pivoting in the way that they do, because it's going to be very difficult now to say, well, hey, if you want to go do this, you're going to have to sign this, and well, this is what I charge. So but we're going to be able to get it covered. So I think
just another change though. Another change.
But I think it's going to be good because now you're just going to have to be transparent and truly show your value of what you're worth and what you do. Like it's just going to make the stronger. I feel.
I want to know, you guys, what has to happen first? So we're talking about all these predictions for 2024. Like, in order for affordability to come back, what has to happen first? Is it? I know we all agree everything works together, but like, what do you think has to happen first for affordability to loosen up a little bit?
Jeez. Yeah.
Is it home prices? Is it inventory? Is it mortgage rates? What is it?
If we go back to 2008 and we see that, it's always going to be inventory, right? When there's just a lot of inventory out there, then that causes home prices to start going down to an affordable pace.
Okay.
We've already seen that incomes don't increase. Incomes are similar to the CPI, right? The core price index, it drags on before you get any pay increase.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really going to be in the supply of homes.
Okay.
The more supply is just going to equal to lower prices and more affordability.
Brian, what do you think?
I was right in line with that. I literally put more inventory, more income, and then I think rates is kind of like the last cherry on top because that's going to happen eventually. This is a broader and bigger problem where it's like there's no actual solution that we're talking about. There's no we know what the solutions are, but they're not really pushing it towards building more, having more permits, more starts. More income, we see in the data, that's the biggest thing that hurts us on the affordability side, that we don't have the income to be able to afford the things that are now priced at a higher level than what we're used to.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think it's inventory, but inventory is a result of policy. So I think the policy at municipalities has to change because it says the builders, they have to show up with an appetite to build because it does cost money to build. Yeah, they make tons of money, they make margin on what they're doing. That's why they do it. They make money. They're businesses. But I'm saying their appetite has to be there. They have to have the right place and location to go and develop another master plan community. That involves municipality and state level, let's say, and regulatory level involvement and participation. So one of my predictions for the rest of this year is like you're going to see that start to ease up because we're going to need it. There's going to have to be more of the creativity that we had been seeing. We talked for earlier this year. We had a couple of instances or a couple of articles we talked about where we're seeing creativity in cities working on housing, and all of a sudden it's like gone silent. I haven't seen anything in like 3 or 4 months about new creative housing solutions because it doesn't seem like there's an appetite for it. So I think the appetite is going to actually trigger and tip over into this other stuff. So. Yeah. That's my opinion. I don't know.
And I think we're going to finish off the year slower than in home sales, slower than 2023.
I was gonna bring that up because I feel that everybody's gonna be at a standstill, watching the election, seeing what happened. The people think, new presidency, this might change a lot for policies, for laws, for just everybody in general. So I think that's gonna be a big catalyst for people to kind of be like, well, let's see what happens. And after that November into December, I think is when people are gonna be like, okay, now we strike. Now that we know what we can expect, now we know what we're going into the next year. I think the winter's going to be an interesting time. I feel.
Of course.
Yeah, winter's going to be interesting, and I think that the Fed is going to play a big part in what the sentiment is and the markets at large, including builders. So. Let's
like I mean, just to throw it out there, I feel that if Trump gets nominated, the markets are going to go crazy in a positive way because they know what that came with his last presidency. The markets did very well, so maybe that be a huge influence.
Yeah,
but, we'll see. Let's see in the comments.
That's a whole different thing because I think the markets broadly don't care. In some ways, they really, really do. In some ways, they don't. I think policy-wise, they're going to care. I think as far as dumping money into the market and letting it ride, people are just going to keep doing that anyways. Yeah. They always have. Wrapping out the show today, guys, we're going to talk about the financial strength of U.S. homeowners is a cushion against a downturn. So this is actually from one of our favorite places, Housing Wire, and they're talking about this CoreLogic Equity Insights report. And in Core, so CoreLogic is really data heavy. You guys know I love them. You guys love me because I love them. You know how I said I didn't say you love them. I said you love me because I love them. But we've discussed this before as well, which is home equity could be the saving grace for a lot of people who get in either financial trouble or they're getting squeezed or there's something they got to pay for. Then they're gonna have to go knock on the front door of that house ATM and take money out. So
I think it currently is already.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to, we haven't talked about this topic in a while, but also I wanted to make sure that the people are watching us and following us. Do you understand? Like, we are here to help you and let your house help you if that's where you have to turn to. I know that sometimes we bring this up, and there's a lot of opinions in the comments that are like, you should never be taking equity out of your house to get yourself out of financial bind. I understand that. I actually see and agree a lot of times on that. But there are certain circumstances where it's not because you're trying to take a $50,000 vacation. You're trying to get out of a massive financial problem that happened, completely separate to poor spending habits and behavior.
Yeah.
The house can do some heavy lifting as long as done responsibly. So there's my little disclaimer. Let's talk about housing equity, guys. Go.
It's what are you the highest ever recorded in history.
What's happening?
So there's just so much of it, right? It's just giving different opportunities to different people. You talked about earlier how one of your friends actually sold his home in Chula Vista and is using that equity to buy in Texas, right? Where they're going to have a lesser payment and therefore they'll have more income, still based on the same income they're probably making, but it's going to feel like more because now their mortgage payment is that much lower.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we're seeing of how people are leveraging income. We're also seeing a lot more an uptick in reverse mortgages where people want to utilize that mortgage because every day we get 10,000 people in from the baby boomers qualifying for a mortgage, right? Usually it takes like 62 years and older. And so people are they're learning how to leverage those situations, and so those are some of the things. I think that is just utilize that equity the way it's meant to be utilized.
So give me some examples, because it's been a while since we talked about this, and I wanted you guys to like maybe share a couple examples today of like either recent conversations or even some recent HELOCs you've done or other like home equity tapping kind of things people have asked you for. What are some of the things happening right now, summer 2024?
So last week I spoke to a couple and I got alerted that they pulled their credit. So I was like, gave them a call and I was like, hey, are you guys looking to do something? I saw, the company that we sent your loan to, they monitor and they saw that you got a credit alert. They're like, oh, my wife actually just inquired about a HELOC through our credit card company. I'm like, interesting. I was like, did they send you terms? They're like, no, we just kind of inquired. He's like, I just found this out. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, what are you guys looking to do? He's like, well, we're trying to knock out anywhere from $90,000 to $100,000 worth of my debt. So I'm like, okay, smart. He's like, yeah. So he's like, is that something that you guys help with? I'm like, yeah, of course we definitely do. So long story short, their biggest hurdle right now is $90,000 to $100,000 worth of debt. Where in their equity right now, they have, I believe, they're at a 76% loan to value from what I counted out right now. So they have a little bit of a margin in there. Yeah. We actually found I was actually doing some research and we found this lender that only specializes in home equity, and they actually let you go up to 95% of your home equity and loan to value. So that right off the bat, and the payment is going to be, I believe, around $700 all said and done. For him, $100,000 to $90,000 worth of debt relieved at a cost of like $700. He's like, all day, I'll take it. His mortgage payment, I think, is going to be roughly all combined a little bit over $4,000. He got in about two years ago, 5.875 rate. So I mean, he's like, I need to pay the debt off. I can refinance down the line. So VA client. So it happens to everybody. It's not just everyday people are going through the exact same struggles. But what I really, really, really want to push is like, don't be stubborn if you have that option. Don't try to go and like like, try to get in more debt to pay off debt. Like I've seen other ways, like the clients come, well, I was going to get another loan to pay off this loan. But I'm like, why would you go more in debt to pay off debt when you have, one of the biggest resources that could absorb it all down the line?
It's kind of the same thing, but it's different. But I want to make sure we make this abundantly clear, because you're saying don't get into more debt to pay off debt, which is exactly what a home equity line of credit is.
But I mean,
but it's not. Hold on, but it's not because it's connected to your house, which you can sell if you have to.
Exactly.
And it's actually where you lay your head. If I go get a debt consolidation loan, that's not my house. I'm just swapping my debt to one other place. I don't live in it. I get no other benefit from it, and I'm not actually advancing maybe my payoff ability. And you can't sell your debt consolidation.
You're
loan.
also more inclined to make your mortgage payment every month as well. Then if something else happens, I mean, that was your last straw. Like now you're kind of.
I'm only saying this because we are selling people debt. That is what we do.
Definitely do that.
The job. But I'm saying that there's a smart way, and I said this when we led into this article, like there's a way where you can coordinate this so you are not putting yourself in a harmful position. I do not agree that debt consolidation loans are a good idea. So I'm not going to say that it's better than HELOC. It's not.
Yeah.
Beyond me saying you can live in your house, that's one. Yeah. And when you sell your house, you can pay off that loan. That's two. You could also sell your house and pay off your debt consolidation loan. It's just not going to be at the favorable terms.
You can't live in your consolidation debt.
Right. But the other potential issue here is that for people who are maybe unsure or uncertain about their work situation. We talked a minute ago about unemployment going up. Well, unemployment is one of the factors the Fed wanted to see go up in order to affect the change to generate a rate cut that they've been talking about. Well, in some cases, you still have to be employed in order to get that HELOC. You got to be able to qualify for the loan that you're asking for. So if you have a sense that maybe your employment is teetering, and you need to use some of that home equity while you still are working, do it because you need to do it.
And also don't wait until you max out all your credit cards, because that's also a huge thing that they look into. They know that obviously you're maxing up your card. So if they notice that in the initial pull, they're going to be like, hey, well, we know what you're trying to do here. Yeah. So just, ask for help before you actually really, really need the help.
Yeah. There's a smart, again, I know I keep saying there's a smart way to do this, guys. I know you have had a lot of smart ways of doing this versus just people doing it abruptly and taking the first thing that shows up in the mail. And that's usually not the best case, not the most favorable terms. And it's not usually with somebody who's already helped you get into the home that you're benefiting from. So do you have any scenarios recently that you've talked about with people regarding equity? And
we've been doing several of them. It's just that it's debt consolidation through just taking money out of their home and paying off their debt. Realizing that sometimes I have to forfeit my low interest rate because I got to overspending, got over my head, and now that's there's no longer a benefit there for me to have that lower interest rate and having that high debt. So they'd rather just, hey, how do I consolidate this, pay all that off, right? If I have my average credit card interest rate is 19% and I still get a 6% interest rate, well, then I'm still doing great.
It definitely varies situation by situation, but I'm glad you say forfeit, because you have to give up that golden handcuffs, that lock-in effect. There are unfortunately people, and again, I know we're using debt examples, but we've talked to people where they had a medical emergency, and now they got like a $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 hospital bill, and insurance isn't going to cover it. It's not something they're actually going to be able to get retroactively paid. That's got to come from somewhere.
And Eddie, you mentioned that it almost seems like it's redundancy, but those are the facts. Things happen in life, and a lot of times they're out of our control. And so when we get in these situations, it is what it is. You just the good thing is you have that equity. A lot of times we buy a home not thinking, oh, we're going to have an equity. We're going to have all this. We bought our home to bring our family in there, create these memories. The good thing is what the market's been doing the past several years, we've been getting all this equity in there. So now we can utilize that at times to get out, out of certain situations we didn't want to be in there, or we're forced into it, And so I think a lot of these debts, people need a new car. People need to pay credit cards to do some upgrades and stuff like that. But it's not all lost.
No, I'm not saying that. I think
I know you're not. I'm just putting it out there and being transparent that these things happen.
It's okay that that's the situation.
Yes.
What I'm saying is there's situations where people are paying off a $100,000 medical bill, and the house is the only thing they can use to do that. That's true. Just as much as it's true that maybe someone did have poor spending habits for a while, and their bad spending behavior, it happened. and the home equity line of credit is going to save them from that. And then hopefully the lesson is that doesn't happen again.
That's correct.
What I'm saying is maybe not the best choice is getting a home equity line of credit to go buy a Hellcat for $100,000.
No,
like don't do
doing
that.
that.
No.
I'm not talking about that. Mikey, don't do it.
Hey, Dad, please. I already did the numbers. We can get $50K from the house. Payment only goes $300 up.
Here's the other thing I have been seeing. The other thing I've been seeing is people are really trying to maximize their line of credits because here in California, we have such great rules with building accessory dwelling units. Those are ADUs, very popular.
Yeah.
People are looking, well, how do I get $200,000-300,000 equity line of credit to put it back in my property and get them to help me pay for even my current mortgage? And that's how it's been working out a lot of times. So it's just, everybody has a different appetite for different things of how to utilizing their equity line instead of going and borrowing money somewhere else or just try to borrow from your own home. And a lot of times when you borrow for your own home and you're building, we got to remember all that interest will be a tax write-off because it's in your own home. If you took that line of credit and then you purchased you purchased it for whatever else, or you paid off credit card debt, it's not a tax write-off. So just there's also additional favorable terms that go into it depending on how you're using it.
So when it comes to equity, guys, but for all you watching, there's a wide variety of things that can be done with home equity. There is a ton of home equity that is broadly available across all, I'll say not asset classes, all age demographics, as well as across the country. And I think we're going to see this for quite a while because the only thing that will squash that is house prices plummeting. And that's just not in the cards right now.
What I find interesting, I wonder is, what is the point, or what's people's goal with their equity? Are they just gonna hey, pay it off, never use it, and cool, I paid my house off, and I'm just sitting on a free paid house, virtually like a lot of boomers, older generations. What's the motive, and what's gonna motivate people to tap into that or use it towards something that's gonna help them out, prosper in life? Because if you sell it, you're gonna walk away with a whole bunch of cash, but
here's the thing too, but there's also capital gains that go with it. So depending on how much equity you have, there's capital gains. There's way how to use that. And the other thing is, I've talked to a lot of people like baby boomers. Their tradition mindset is, I want to leave it for my kids. Like a free and clear. For me, I'm like, heck no. When I'm 62, bro, I am going to go for a reverse mortgage. I want no payment. I want nothing. I have a ton of equity I can use in there. I'll get a HELOC to go with it. Use that HELOC for $500 because the max is $500,000. Try to get it to the max. And then I can that earns interest. So if I don't use it every year, not only do I have money, my property will appreciate, but the line of credit will also appreciate. You know what I mean? Hopefully offset whatever I'm being negative on that reverse mortgage. So I don't know. I want to live life.
That's perfect. I got
different, right?
I wanted to see what you guys thought because that's completely different than some other people would try to do. But I think you use it how you want it. But if it's there, might as well use it.
I had a client.
If you have the idea or
I had a client last week. She calls me and she says, "We inherited this property. My brother and I. My brother wants to sell it." Right? And I said, so what do you think it's worth? It's worth about $1 million. What do you owe on it? $0.
Wow.
Right? And I said, well, you have to buy your brother out. Well, maybe you could buy him out and you'll have him. I don't want no mortgage payment. So I'm like, well, then how do you want to buy him out? Right? So that was the thing. And she's all like, well, I just don't want any payments because I want to leave my kids something with no balance. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, you want the whole cake and you want to eat it.
So what I was writing here as I'm listening to you guys and kind of thinking about this myself to answer is I think it comes down to ideology versus circumstances.
That's it.
I think you have an ideologically aged and the boomer generation broadly to pay off everything. And again, this is, and even, people who love or hate Dave Ramsey, like you're going to be told to pay off your house. Right, pay cash for everything you can. Don't carry any debt and pay off your house. And I understand the argument of that too. But also, I think circumstances is part of this. I think circumstances like this one, where you're like, I'm inherited this house. I need to give my brother his half. Well, you can't have it all ways. You can't get $500,000 out of that $1 million asset to split without it being a mortgage, and then him have the money, and then you have no payment. You can't also do that.
Not only that, that's how I told her you're going to avoid the capital gains because when you sell it, you're going to have capital gains. And the other way to to not have tax as capital gain, avoid that is by doing 1031 exchange. She's like, I don't want to go do that again.
Right.
And I said, so the best thing to do is take the money out on that property that's already a 2-unit property. It already has the renters in there, so you don't have to deal with new stuff. You know, they're already there. Everything's already there. You'll just have to qualify, or in this case, the property just has to qualify.
The SE.
That's solid. That's a good example. I'm glad I didn't know you had that one. I didn't know about that one, so I'm glad that you brought that up today.
There's just different circumstances.
But her ideology is different than from what you're seeing, because you're over here like, I have the solution that helps everybody. But her ideology stuck on, well, I want this. And sometimes that's what we come across, and you just have to tell them.
But just like all of us, we're slow learners when we're not really one to listen, right? Like they said, the teacher can't teach when the student's not ready to be taught.
Right.
So in this case, that's what happens. It just takes time. It takes a little bit of research for them to kind of get that comfort.
But the seed was planted.
Exactly. The seed was planted. Advice is there. We'll see how it all goes.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want to hear that.
Well, that was a good one. Thank you guys for another great show today. I think we're on the cusp of some things changing. As much as they might seem they're stuck in some ways, I think that there are some things changing. I do believe this summer will not be the one that we thought it was going to be, and I am saying that a little bit dour. Like, I wish it was going to be better, but it maybe not be. But I really do hope that maybe there's some new interest that when the Fed cuts rates in the fall, there will be something that sparks of that, and then that would kick off some other things. So thank you guys for.
I think it's going to stimulate it
for another great show.
Yeah, and here's the thing with everything that's going on, you just got to be a little more diverse. You got to go and search other things that will implement or offset some of your current debt, etc. You just prepare better.
Yeah, good. What was your favorite part of the show today, by the way?
My favorite part of the show is just understanding CPI. Always had to kind of, even so many years in the industry, I had to go to ChatGPT and ask it, like, how do you really determine CPI, in a nutshell, as a 8-year-old? And so when it told me the basket, I finally understood it. Like, you're throwing employment, you're throwing debt in there. It's like, it was like an aha moment. So for me, it was that.
Yeah. How about you, Brian?
Inflation's dropping or slowing, so that's good. Hopefully, like last week, we got good data for pricing, and I'm hopeful that it continues into these next couple of weeks to summer, and then we'll see when the Fed want to pull that trigger on the rate cut.
Well, I like our home equity conversation. I think that's a solution-based conversation that we are having offline with a lot of people, that I think people online need to know that we're having with folks, so that there's not any embarrassment, shame, or doubt about whether I should even ask if I can get help or not. Like, you can ask anything you need to or want to, so you can get help. And certainly don't let other people who don't understand your circumstances or aren't walking in your shoes tell you that it's embarrassing or shameful to ask those questions about your situation. I understand ideologically there's definitely differences between age groups, but also circumstances are circumstances, and sometimes you might need a house to do some heavy lifting. So that's my takeaway from today.
And that's a good one.
There's no prize for pride when it comes to that kind of thing.
I agree.
I never saw it that way, but you're so spot on with that. I mean, I would say, like, read reviews, go to mortgage and kind of read through some of these things to see, because everybody has a different circumstance and experience, especially when they're refinance. I know we've had a lot of clients that were like, thank goodness I follow your instructions. Mind you, this could have been times where the rates were so low in the 2s, but I also had them in the 3s and the 4s, you know what I mean? And right now, I think, we've been refinancing quite a bit now. It's happening again. Yeah. And so people are still appreciative, even at a 6 1/4 that we just got done. They're like, oh my God, I feel so much better already.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
Yeah. Wearing that weight around your neck can get tiring.
Big time.
Well, thank you guys once again. And thank you all for watching the Mortgage Heroes Weekly podcast. We are so grateful for you watching and interacting and engaging with us. Remember to like this channel, subscribe to it, turn on notifications so every time we launch a new episode, you find out about it. And then if you haven't checked out our Friends of Mortgage Heroes, Will, Brian, and myself interview friends of ours in and around mortgage and real estate. We don't always talk about success. There's usually a lot of failures that come along with that, but also a lot of wisdom. We had some really cool guests recently, and we have some more coming up for this fall that I'm really excited for.
We just had one that rang the freaking NASDAQ bell.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Went public.
Shouts out Dee.
Yeah, if you didn't check out our most recent Friends of Mortgage Heroes with Aphrodite Aguilar, her and her husband and their team went and rang the bell at the NASDAQ recently. So that was a great interview. Would have thought, knowing them, lots of wisdom.
Yeah, knowing them for so many years, when would we ever have thought? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then you watch them do it, and you're like, of course it was them, right? Yeah, it's like it's kind of both at once. Like, who would have thought? But then also, well, yeah, of course it's them. Duh.
But absolutely, thank you guys all for watching and supporting us.
Yep. All right. right. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you guys for another great show. We'll see you again next week.
Bye, guys.
See ya.